back live on this Wednesday, talking rock with you as we do every day here on Trunk Nation on our new home of Faction Talk. New hours, live 3 to 5 Eastern every day. And we'll get some phone calls going here in just a little bit. But I'm going to spend a few minutes with this guy who's an old friend and a great musician and guitarist who you best know these days from playing in Def Leppard, but has also been a big part of the Dio band and also has a great band called Last in Line on the side of Def Leppard, who released a new song a few days ago, a cover of the Beatles classic A Day in the Life. Joining us now live on Trunk Nation is Vivian Campbell. Viv, how are you, man?
I'm just splendid, Eddie. Thanks. How are you doing?
Doing good. So how do you feel about the first run of the long-awaited stadium tour? How was it for you?
It's been fantastic. Other than getting rained on every single night, pretty much, I think the first 9 shows straight we had rain. And I mean like heavy rain, you know. But yeah, it's been brilliant. The crowds have been fantastic. You know, it's been great to work with Motley and Poison and Joan Jett. Everyone's been getting along good and behaving nicely. So yeah. Lovely.
You, of course, Leppard are no strangers to playing stadiums around the world and have been for many, many years and decades. How is this differed than some of the other shows at this level that you've done with Leppard over the years in your time in the band?
Well, it's kind of like a little mini festival, you know? I mean, Joan's on first, then Poison, then, you know, with Leppard and Motley, we sort of flip-flop depending on what night it is. But it's an interesting concept, you know. It's been very, very successful. I think people are just, you know, thankful to get out after a couple of years of being locked up with COVID, and you know, it's just great to see people back out appreciating live music again, and it's wonderful. And I've been saying this for many, many years, and I'll continue to say it, is that our audience is changing. You know, there's a large percentage are young enough to be our kids, and that's very, very encouraging to see when you get that kind of youthful energy coming to the shows. So, you know, it's just been fantastic for everyone, and all the bands are playing great, everyone's singing great, everyone's staying healthy. You know, what's not to like?
And Leppard is the only band on the whole bill, and I actually had Brett on Monday, so we've covered a few different bands from this tour so far, but Leppard is the only band on this tour that has new music. You've got a new record in Diamond Star Halos, which is out there, and you are playing some of it live. How has that been to showcase the new music to this audience, which is clearly, obviously, more of the retro vibe? Are they embracing the new songs?
Absolutely, yeah. The one thing about the new music, though, is that for the most part, it does seamlessly fit in there with the classic rock. So, you know, it just has a lot of that natural Def Leppard vibe and sound to it. So it was pretty easy to put it in. In particular, you know, the opening song is one of Sav's songs. It's called Take What You Want. And it's just a barnstormer of a song. I mean, it's a great intro to the show. It's also the intro song for the album. It's the first song on the record. So, yeah. You know, I think people are probably nodding along with the first chorus of that before they even realize that it's a new song, you know. And it's been good. I mean, I do think, you know, we took a pretty bold stand at the start of the tour, and we decided to go out and play a bunch of new songs in the show, which isn't something, as you said, that a lot of bands from our generation do anymore. But we're encouraged by our belief in the record and by our record company's belief in the record and the response that it's gotten. You know, so we thought it was the appropriate thing to actually go out there and show that we have that much faith in it by actually playing so many of the new songs live. And, you know, we've altered our set a little bit as we've tweaked it here and there to make it better. But, you know, we're still out there representing the new songs. And as I'm sure I've said to you before, and I know Joe said to you many times, is, you know, it's important for us creatively to keep exercising that muscle, you know, to keep writing and recording and producing new music and to show that we believe in it, you know, to go out there and represent it and not just have it be an excuse for a tour, you know, but actually to have it be part of the show and part of the tour.
And you guys were pretty low key. I mean, I haven't had a chance. I mean, I saw you at the Whiskey for the launch of the record and all of that, but yeah. I've not had a chance to talk to you on the air about Diamond Star Halo since it's been out. But it came as a bit of surprise of a surprise to most fans, including myself, that you guys were even working on new music. And I know it's been covered to some degree, but I mean, much of the record was done in lockdown, right? I mean, everybody in different places sending in tracks. Did you like working that way versus being in a studio face to face?
In the end, yes, I got there. Initially, it was a bit of a panic, I got to say, because we pretty much started working on the record as soon as the 2020 tour was postponed. So like everyone else in the world, March, April of 2020, the world shuts down, and it's like, okay, all your plans are put on ice. And Joe, he emailed us all and he said, we should use this time. I got some songs. Let's start doing a record. We don't know how long we're going to be down for, so let's just, do this and see how it goes. So in a way, we were sort of prepared to work alone, because the way that Leppard works in the studio is pretty unique anyway. I mean, we don't normally cut tracks live in the studio. We pretty much work to a click track and, put drums on last sort of thing, or change it as we go. And, each guy does their own part individually. So, in a way, we were sort of more adept at doing a record this way remotely. For me, it was a very steep learning curve, though, because I am a total Luddite with technology. I just do not get on. So I had to, make a lot of calls and ask a lot of grown-up friends, how does this work? How do I do that? And, I had to get some new hardware, some new software. But eventually I got there. And so, for a big part of this record, I just felt I was playing catch-up, that ideas were coming in thick and fast. And I was just learning how to just record and get in there. And I started initially just doing a bunch of vocals, which were the easier part. It was easier for me to get a mic signal into the box rather than try and get into guitar parts. But once I got comfortable with that for several weeks, and I started getting into the guitar parts and eventually got that to where it was a workable situation. The big advantage of working that way, though, is you don't have people looking over your shoulder. You're not working on the clock. Nobody knew we were making a record. There was no schedule, no agenda, no timeline, and especially as regards guitar solos, I do a solo and I just walk away from it for a couple hours or even a couple of days, and I'd come back to it and I'd listen to it, and then I could hear it with fresh ears, and I could hear parts that were good and parts that weren't as good. So it allowed me that opportunity to have more perspective on what it was I was doing and to correct things and do it at my own pace. So ultimately it is a good way, but I don't think it's a way that many bands could really work, but for us, and given our experience in the studio and how we make records, it was a plus. Well, and actually, for people that don't know, everybody in the band is kind of spread out. Joe's in Ireland and Sav's in England, and you're on the East Coast of the U.S. now, and I know Rick Allen's in the L.A. area still, and Phil's in L.A. So with all the different time zones and people spread out, to be able to work in your own comfort zone in terms of time of day and at your own pace and be able to send the stuff into Ronan and have him put it all together, I would imagine is pretty convenient. But just as a rock fan to me, and I get that that's kind of has to be out of necessity, especially during a pandemic, but as a rock fan to me, and I'm not a musician, but I would think nothing replaces the idea of looking across the room at the other guys and sitting there plugged into buzzing amps and just going for it in a live studio. I mean, do you feel that way also? Yeah. Totally, and that's why I have Last in Line. It's a completely different thing. I mean, with Last in Line, that's how we cut tracks. It's the old school way that we did back with the original Dio band. You go into the room and you all literally make eye contact with each other, and there's a real sort of energy there. There's a push-pull sort of dynamic that you don't necessarily get by working in a more sterile, one-on-one way. But it's horses for courses, as they say. What works for one band might not work for another. That just happens to be the Last in Line way. I couldn't imagine us ever recording an album the way that Def Leppard records an album. And, at the same time, I could never imagine Def Leppard recording an album the way Last in Line does. But they're two totally different things. And I just happen to be fortunate enough to exercise both muscles, so it's been great for me.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I want to talk about Last in Line here in a second, but one other thing on Leppard as we kind of close that out. Obviously, the next leg of the stadium tour starts this weekend and then you guys are out there for another month or so doing that. And then what's the plan for Leppard going forward? Because you still have this new record that I'm sure you want to promote around the world. So are you going to go off and do your own dates? And what's the projection for the next year or two for Leppard? Pretty active as far as playing live?
There's been a lot of interest in the stadium tour with us and Motley, and there's a lot of talk about taking that overseas next year, going global with that. So we'll see. I mean, that would be exciting to do that. You know, we haven't played overseas in many years, obviously. And, yeah, that would be fun. Hopefully the grown-ups can put that together.
So to continue doing this co-headline with Motley is and to take it, because that's the other thing about Motley. Nobody really knows, and I asked Nicky this, and he wasn't even really sure of what Motley is, meaning like, did Motley, who were famously retired, did they get back together just to do this with you guys, or are they going to continue after this as a functioning, touring band that's going to be out there? And I don't know if we really have that answer, but it sounds like everyone's saying, yeah, it would be nice to do another run with you guys and to do it in Europe or wherever you plan on doing it.
Well, I don't want to speak for Nicky, but if I were a gambling man, I'd be putting money on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that they're having a lot of fun, as are we, and the package works, you know, so it's a big world. We want to go out there and play it, so I would guess it's probably going to happen.
All right, so there's the Leppard update, if you will. And then shifting gears, you mentioned your other band, which I love, Last in Line, which is with Vinny Appice, your other Dio bandmate there, and Phil Soussan, of course, and the incredible Andrew Freeman singing. And you have released new music, and interesting, a cover of the Beatles' A Day in the Life. When did you get around to recording this, and is this EP going to be all covers, or is just this lead track a Beatles cover?
Well, again, going back to spring of 2020 when everything shut down, we had talked about doing a cover song prior to that, and we'd already started cutting the first 6 tracks for what will be the third album, which will come out early next year. But we wanted to keep the ball moving. We wanted to do something. It's funny, I was just telling you 5 minutes ago about how Last in Line always cut tracks live, and we look at each other in the studio while we do it, and we have that push-pull dynamic going on. Well, Day in the Life is the one exception to that. That's the one song that we didn't do that way. We kind of did it the Def Leppard way by building on a track and reverse engineering it. That was just out of necessity, because this was, like I say, March, April, May of 2020, and we couldn't travel, we couldn't be together. So we basically built up the track that way and did it remotely, and that was an interesting thing for us, because, like I said, that's never anything that we've done before, or indeed since. To answer your question as to what else is on the EP, it's the cover of Day in the Life. It's a new song from the album called Hurricane Orla, and it's 2 live tracks. One of a song from the first album, Heavy Crown, and another from the second album. So it's a 4-track EP with just the one cover on it.
And that comes out in November, right?
You would know more than I would, Eddie.
I'm looking at your site, which is lastinlineofficial.com, and it says well, I'll let you know, Viv. It's coming. The EP is coming out on November 12th, and it'll also come out as a limited edition vinyl disc as well for those 4 songs.
Right.
So there you go. And there's a video for the song out there right now. And tackling a Beatles song, I mean, what's the approach? First of all, were you a big Beatles fan? Most people were, but maybe, I mean, where did the Beatles land for you as a kid growing up in Ireland? And talk about your approach to digging into this particular song from them.
Oh, the Beatles were huge for all of us. The first song I ever actually learned how to play on guitar was She Loves You. I remember working out the chords and when I was a kid on holiday one summer, and I was well chuffed with myself because I'd actually figured that out. It was a pretty ambitious song to take on. To be honest, I don't know how we really ended up on that one. We were discussing what would be an appropriate and interesting cover for us to do. We didn't want to do something from the genre, so it wasn't like we were going to try and do an AC/DC song or something from the hard rock world. we decided we wanted to tackle something that would be a little left field. I got to say, probably it was Phil Susan, who came up with the idea for Day in the Life, but we were, certainly not in need of coaxing because, like I said, we're all massive Beatles fans, and it is such an ambitious song to take on, with time changes and key changes and whatnot, especially to do it in the way that we had to do it in this remote sort of fashion. But it was good in as much as it actually gave us some impetus to do something and to keep moving forward. Because, like I said, this was spring of 2020, and all of a sudden, all plans were on hold. So it was a good thing for us to keep inching the band forward and keep making that progression.
So when this EP comes out, there's going to be one song that will be on the next full-length record. You had mentioned you're about 6 songs in on that. So the next full-length Last in Line album, it sounds like, will be sometime next year?
Correct, early next year. Yeah, this is our first record for Ear Music, the German label. We're excited to work with them. It's been a great relationship so far. So, obviously we wanted the record out a lot sooner. We originally cut the first half dozen tracks in January of 2020 out in LA. And then, like I said many times, everything just went on hold. So it was only in February of this year that we were finally able to get together again live in the studio to cut the remaining half dozen backing tracks. And then we worked on those, got them finished up, and record companies needing a long lead time for vinyl, et cetera, that's pushed us into early next year for a release. But I would guess February of next year.
Yeah, and Viv, I'm curious about this because I give you a lot of credit for hanging in there with Last in Line and doing this, because there are so many artists who are in major bands, like you being in Def Leppard and touring at the highest level, and have bands on the side that they don't stick with because they just can't change gears and go from playing to a stadium to a club for a few hundred people and traveling in a van and going on at 11:30 at night. You have the option to not do that because your main band is Def Leppard, but you've hung in there with this a lot longer than a lot of other people would have. I was just talking to Geezer Butler. He had a band called Deadland Ritual, and I said to Geezer, what happened? He goes, I'm not bloody going out and playing clubs. He just didn't want to do it anymore. So what is it that you get from Last in Line overall that makes you want to keep doing this? And I love that you do, because I love the band, but you clearly don't have to. But what is it that you get out of the band so much?
There's a lot that I get out of it. I mean, there's the satisfaction of playing with a band like that. It's a very, very different band from Def Leppard. Leppard is just an amazing band. Our vocals are off the chart good. We work at that really, really hard. Our show is super slick and produced, and there's a lot about Def Leppard that's unique and can't be replicated in any other band. And then Last in Line is just like the total opposite for me. It's a band, like I said, that cuts tracks live in the studio. When we play together, regardless of the size of a stage that we're on, we all set up kind of much like Led Zeppelin did. If you look at old footage of Zeppelin, they're all like within 6 or 8 feet of each other. There's that a sort of a oneness to the band, that's like, again, this push-pull sort of energy when you play live. When we do shows with Last in Line, we frequently go off the rails and start jamming at the end of songs and stuff. That's just not the kind of thing you do with Def Leppard. So for me as a musician, as a guitarist, it's a different thing. And specifically as a guitarist, because I really get to spread my wings as a player in Last in Line. It allows me to do things that are spontaneous. It definitely has made me a much, much better player when I come back to Def Leppard after being with Last in Line. I know my playing's at the top of the game. So, it's difficult, to go out and, travel the way we travel and eat cheese sandwiches every day and get no sleep. And, it's not glamorous, but it is very, very rewarding in very different ways. And like I said, I feel incredibly fortunate to be able to have both these experiences and see both sides of the equation. It also makes me very, very appreciative for what we have with Def Leppard, and the success that the band's attained. And and continues to gather. So it's, we don't take it for granted. And I just can't imagine not doing either, to be honest. And you are what you do in life. It's like whatever, you get up in the morning, you put your shoes on, and you go out and you do whatever it is you do. And that's what defines you. And all I ever wanted to be was a guitar player in a rock band. So I'm fortunate enough to be in two incredible bands at the same time.
And you've really, with Last in Line, which when it started out really as a band made to play the first two Dio records, which of course, when it started, when Jimmy was still with us, it was the three members that made those records of the band. So it started as that, and what it's evolved into, I think, is also really cool because it's now pretty much split. And last time I saw you play live, I think it was at Vamped in Vegas maybe, and I thought the balance of the set was perfect, where you now have 4 or 5 songs from the Last in Line records that are originals that I think are really good and staples of the set, and then spiking in, like every other song, a Dio classic. I think that the balance of what you guys are delivering now is perfect in terms of what fans would want to see, and I think it's really cool that you've evolved into that.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, that's what we've sort of been aiming to do. We started off, playing songs from Holy Diver, Last in Line, from which we took our name, and even Sacred Heart, the third Dio album. After a while, we stopped playing the Sacred Heart songs for various reasons. We all have, I mean, those of us who were there have kind of painful memories about that record, but that's not to say it was a bad record, but we ended up just pretty much playing songs from Holy Diver and Last in Line. And then, we never intended it to be an original music band, but after a couple of years, we got offered a label deal with Frontiers, and we did our first album, Heavy Crown, with Jeff Pilson producing, and we were very proud of that record. The history, Jimmy passed away a month before the album came out, and, we pushed on with Phil Suzanne and the band, and it just kind of, it's grown and developed, and it's been, very pleasurable to be part of that and part of the growth of the band. As a musical unit, we really kind of, stayed somewhat true to that original Dio ethos and how we write and how we record and how the overall sound of the band is. But at the same time, it kind of, is pushing different boundaries. And, with Andrew and his whole approach to singing and his whole lyrical approach. And I think, Phil musically coming into the band has really pushed another dimension for us as well. So, it's a very exciting band. And I got to say, whether we're playing live or writing, recording in the studio, it's a pleasure to play with those guys.
How do you feel about Andrew, your singer in Last in Line, joining Great White?
He's an asshole. He knows that I know he's an asshole. No, Andy's much in demand, so, he's always kind of floated around between this, that, and the other, filling in gaps. I do feel bad because, the guys in Last in Line have had to wait for me a lot when I'm off running around doing stuff with Def Leppard, and, so I fully get that everyone else has to kind of go out and do their own projects and stuff, But I'd like to think that Andrew's on loan to Great White while we're waiting. It's kind of like a soccer player goes on loan to another club. He's still under contract at Last in Line.
So, and you've got Last in Line dates coming up. So you have a window in your Leppard schedule where you're going to be able to play some shows. I'm looking now at the website. Looks like September 23rd. There's a clump of dates, and then some dates in October, November, some dates scattered around a little bit. So you do have some. You are going to be able to make some time to go out and play with the guys, right?
Yeah. So the weekend after the Leppard tour finishes, I have another rally. I really get into rally driving over the last.
I was going to ask you about that. You're really into racing now, right?
Yeah. So literally, I get home on a Sunday night, and by that Wednesday, I'm leaving to go to a rally. So I have 2 more national rallies in October and November this year. But the weekend after the rally, I'm back to doing those shows, like you said, September 23rd, 24th, something like that. Yeah, we have a bunch of dates that were already on the calendar, so we're going to honor those. And then we booked a bunch more, a couple of weeks worth, sometime in November, I believe. And yeah, so keeping it going, no rest for the wicked and all that.
What are these cars that you drive? I'm not into racing, but how would you describe it? Like, what type of car is it?
A gravel rally, like forest rally. You do basically logging roads, You know, so you're driving on gravel, loose surface kind of stuff. The car gets all sort of sideways and fun. It's all great fun until you hit a tree. You know?
Yeah, or you break a finger and you're a guitar player.
No, you know what? I've had a couple of massive rollover crashes in my short rally career. And it's amazing how when you look at the car and the car's totaled. The last one I did total the car back in April. And you get out of it and I literally don't have a scratch. I mean, it's quite unbelievable, you know, the safety that's engineered into these cars.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Is there video online of anything or of you doing that? I'd like to see you do that.
I have video of my last big crash when I totaled the car, but I'm not going to show you that.
All right. Well, as long as you're safe, Viv, that's the most important thing.
I am safe. I'll show you the video next time I see you. I have it on my phone, my in-car camera stuff, but I'm not making it public.
All right. Sounds like a plan. All right. Couple quick things, and I promise I'll let you go. I wanted to ask you about your health first and foremost. How you doing? That's nothing more important than that. How's things going?
Just kicking the can down the road, you know. So, take it as it comes, you know.
Is this the type of thing that you're always going to just have to manage, exactly, or is it something that they're going to be able to knock out completely at some point?
There's very, very few cancer doctors in the world who will ever say that you're cured. You know, the best you hope for is remission. So that's not to say that cure isn't possible, but, you know, I'm pretty much of the mindset that, you know, I'll deal with this for the rest of my life, but, you know, it is what it is. It's kind of like going to the dentist, just a bit more involved.
What's involved in your treatments? Because there were times when you first were diagnosed with cancer where you had missed some Leppard shows because you had to go back to a certain city and get treatments. Where are you at with that now? Yeah,
nothing so invasive or intrusive, you know, nothing that's going to sideline me, I hope, you know. So it's always the hardest part of the whole thing for me is trying to schedule treatments that don't interfere with my work. That becomes even more difficult when there's more than one band involved. But, you know, we make it work. So I hope never to have to miss another Def Leppard show.
Well, we hope so too, man, because there's nothing more important than keeping you healthy. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're able to manage it as best you can and have a handle on it. Okay, and then I got to ask you about this, and I don't know if you've heard this yet. Speaking of Dio and your records you made as a member of Dio, have you heard the new remix of Holy Diver?
I have not, and I find it a little bit unsettling that I ended up being talked into doing an interview a couple of months ago about it, you know, and not having heard the record. And I got to say, I haven't heard good reports. So that was a little weird. You know, I said, well, hang on, I just spoke to some journalists at length about this, but I haven't actually even heard the product. I've heard that they've put out you know, outtakes of tracks from Holy Diver and solos that didn't make the cut, you know, and I'm wondering, like, why, you know, there's a reason why stuff didn't make a record in the first place. You know, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to be putting it out there.
Well, there's a bonus disc and there's a live thing. It's a whole box set. But the thing about the remix of Holy Diver, and you can hear it online or on the streaming services, but Joe Barresi, the guy who remixed it, I did a big special for the re-release of it. Vinny was there. We did a whole thing at the Rainbow. And Joe Barresi, one of the top mix engineers out there, he did the remix. And he was a huge fan of the record. And he was at the broadcast that I did. And we talked about it, and he said, you know, my biggest concern was I didn't want to fuck it up because it's pretty much flawless as it is. What Angelo did initially is still so great and holds up. He said, all I really wanted to do was hear a little bit more of Vivian. So I said, Viv's probably going to love this then. So that's why I was curious if you heard it, because as a mix guy, he said he wanted to give, you know, goose you up a little bit more in the mix.
Well, I don't know. Like I say, I've yet to hear it, so that's interesting.
And the other really interesting thing he did, which as a fan I loved, is like at the Holy Diver ends cold now, where it's like instead of fading, he let it go all the way to the end, and you guys do this big finish. And Vinny said that was the way the song originally was, and like on Invisible, instead of fading, there's this huge jam. So he let he let the tape and it ride right out to a cold end instead of pulling it down, so you do hear more playing, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. Again, now you got me excited. I need to hear this.
I'll make sure you get a copy.
All good.
It's real good. And the last thing, I know you had nothing to do with the record because you weren't in Def Leppard yet, but today is the 35th anniversary of the release of Hysteria. And I'm wondering, of course, you weren't in the band, but were you a fan, and was Hysteria a record you liked when you first heard it?
Oh, I was a huge fan. I was always a Def Leppard fan from like way back. I remember buying the Wasted 7-inch single. I remember having the first album. I remember buying the second album, so on and so forth. But when Hysteria came out, I actually bought it on cassette first because I didn't have a CD player. And I actually wore out the cassette pretty much. I was listening to it that much, but it was also one of the very, very first CDs that I ever bought. So, it really kind of was a record for that digital CD era, where you could really kind of get into high fidelity and listen to the different, layers of guitar. At first, it was a little shocking to me. I remember hearing it the first time and thinking, hang on, the guitars are very minimal here. They're very light, but it wasn't that it was lacking in guitar parts. It was just there were so many different parts that they had to obviously be very specific about guitar tones and stuff. It wasn't certainly your traditional hard rock record, but I think everyone's aware of that by now.
Yeah, I mean, I was a Leppard fan from day one. I was there when On Through the Night came out and was their first record. And I'll be honest, and I've talked about it before, I was very thrown by Hysteria. Being a guy that was way more into the High and Dry, On Through the Night, even Pyromania era. And Joe has talked about this before, which I always found amazing. Joe would always tell me that Def Leppard, in America, Pyromania was massive, but he said outside of America, they didn't break till Hysteria, which I couldn't believe. But as a guy that was on Leppard from the beginning and saw them on the High and Dry tour, when it got to Hysteria, I'm like, they may have gone too far as production and layering. It didn't have that same bite to me. Of course, it's gone on to be one of the biggest records ever. I get all that, but what lens you view it through is a little different. If you got into the band because of that record, that's one thing. But if you were there from the beginning, like you and I were, I think people look at it a little differently.
Sure, absolutely. But you've also got to allow artists and bands room to grow. And it was kind of courageous. I mean, you could see what was happening with Leppard, starting with Pyromania, and the electronic drums and whatnot and the big vocals. So it was definitely heading in that direction. I don't think a lot of bands would have had the temerity to try that, Obviously, it was a combination of Def Leppard and Mutt Lange that did it, with Mutt's expertise and vision, and but it was also as much, Def Leppard's openness to that, to embrace it and to try it, and it was a big risk, but I think it's paid off.
Yeah, clearly. And you've played it, obviously, as a member of the band countless times, even playing it in its entirety. Do you enjoy it? You enjoy playing it?
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, there's not a bad song on that record. It's unbelievable. There's a reason why it has been such a landmark record in music history, So it is. It's great to play it, and to actually get inside the songs is very informative. Just to hear the parts, to learn the parts, to see how they work together, and then the whole vocal aspect of it.
Oh yeah,
so, yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah, the vocal stuff is amazing, what you guys do. I was watching you at the Whiskey do your warm-ups before you came out, and I'm like, you guys are so dialed in and so good at that, and it makes me crazy when people say this. You put so much work into the vocal part that people actually think it's not real. And I'm like, that's actually a good backhanded compliment, because I know it is real, and it's friggin' amazing that it's real.
No, that's true. I mean, we definitely work very hard at it, and it is a backhanded compliment, but we'll take it.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, I appreciate the time. I know you're busy. I know you're getting ready to go out on the next leg of this stadium tour this weekend. I hope to catch a show soon. I'm looking at maybe the last date in Vegas, but I hope to see you out there soon. And say hello to the guys, and best of luck with the Last in Line stuff, too. I played it on my show on Monday. We'll keep getting the word out about that, because I love that band also, and I hope to see you with them as well. So thanks for the time, man, and stay healthy, okay? And don't get any any more car wrecks with that racing thing.
Well, I'll try not. Yeah, you don't win races if you wrap it around a tree, you know. So.
You don't win in life if you wrap around a tree, Viv.
Yeah, I got to avoid that moving forward. All right. Thanks, Eddie. Lovely to talk to you again.
All right, you too, man. Sure. Take care, all right? Bye-bye. There he goes, everybody. Vivian Campbell. Some great stuff from him. Definitely amazing. He's not even heard the Holy Diver remix, so I'll have to make sure I get him a copy of that.